What were you doing during the eclipse, George?
I took a little nap. I was awake for most of it, but one person who was not taking a nap yesterday, the president, I wonder if he's seeing spots. He looked right at it. They were yelling, "Don't look." The president did look. We hope he's okay this morning. Of course, hours later, he did give his primetime speech on Afghanistan, outlining his strategy for America's longest war. He says it's a dramatic shift from the past, certainly a dramatic shift for him. For years, he argued for pulling out, saying the war couldn't be won. The big questions this morning: what is victory? How many more troops will it take? How long is it going to take? We're going to talk to Ambassador Nikki Haley ahead about that.
That is all coming up. But first, let's get right to our senior White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega, for all the reaction to the president's Afghanistan speech. Good morning to you, Cecilia.
Amy, good morning to you. And the president is tweeting this morning in the wake of that speech, saying that the future of our country is strong. Now, he did not specify the number of troops that he wants on the ground in Afghanistan. He did not specify a withdrawal date, but he did make a rare admission. He says he was wrong about America's longest running war. In a rare primetime address to the nation, President Trump unveiled a new Afghanistan strategy with the rare admission of flip-flop.
My original instinct was to pull out, and historically, I like following my instincts. But all my life, I've heard that decisions are much different when you sit behind the desk in the Oval Office.
The president, who once said the war in Afghanistan was a complete disaster that warranted immediate withdrawal,
let's get with it. Get out of Afghanistan,
is now committing American troops to a fight there for the foreseeable future.
We are not nation building again. We are killing terrorists.
Taking aim at the enemy.
They are nothing but thugs and criminals and predators, and that's right, losers.
And also at Pakistan.
We can no longer be silent about Pakistan's safe havens for terrorist organizations. It is time for Pakistan to demonstrate its commitment to civilization, order, and to peace.
He's following the advice of his generals, who argue the only way to ultimately beat back the Taliban and ISIS is with more American boots on the ground.
We will not talk about numbers of troops or our plans for further military activities. Conditions on the ground, not arbitrary timetables, will guide our strategy from now on.
But he is also trying to turn a new page on one of the worst weeks in his presidency. After accusations that he divided the nation in the wake of Charlottesville, now President Trump is talking unity.
When we open our hearts to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice, no place for bigotry, and no tolerance for hate.
Now, Republicans like Paul Ryan and John McCain are praising the president's speech, but one Kentucky Republican Congressman, Thomas Massey, says, take a look at this. I had hoped the Afghanistan war would end soon, but now it's inevitable that babies born during the war will be deploying to the war in 2019. The Taliban is also responding this morning. In a statement, a Taliban spokesman calls the president's speech on Afghanistan unclear and old. George.
Okay, Cecilia, thanks very much. Let's get more on this now from America's UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. She joins us from the White House this morning. Ambassador Haley, thank you for joining us this morning. You know, the president said last night, we will win in Afghanistan, but he didn't define victory. So can you define victory specifically for the American people?
Well, I think what we're trying to do is defeat terrorism of all kinds. And I think in Afghanistan, what it's become is a safe haven. But it's not just about Afghanistan, it's also about the region. And so I think what you're seeing the president and the generals do is basically say, look, let's stay focused. Let's look at the terrorist attacks that could happen on American soil, but let's go after terrorism. And I think what you heard last night was strong. It was solid. I was in the National Security Council meetings, which there were multiple meetings. I saw the process of where it went. I saw this president ask a lot of questions, and I saw him want to go in a different direction. And I think it's a direction that's good for the country.
But Ambassador Haley, as you know, we've been there for almost 16 years now going after the terrorists. So I repeat my question, what is victory?
Well, I think victory is obviously that we want to see that we're defeating terrorism, we're defeating Taliban, we're defeating Al-Qaeda, we're defeating ISIS. And I think what you're going to see is with this plan It's not going to be like the past 16 years where you knew how many troops and where and what. It's going to be very calculated. It's going to be very strategic. But more importantly, it's not going to be based on time. It's going to be based on results. And I think we've seen results like that. If you look at our the way we're taking on ISIS in Syria and Iraq, if you look at the way we've handled North Korea, this is all very results driven. It's not about the talk, it's about getting things done.
But as you know, a lot of people hear that. They hear no ceiling on troops. They hear no timetable. They think that is a blank check.
Well, it's not a blank check. I can assure you the president was never going to allow a blank check, which is why he started in the beginning saying this war has gone on too long. 17 years is too long. We've lost too many lives and we've spent too much money. That's why this approach is going to be very different. But what you're not going to hear are the details. In the past, we've had administrations that have given out everything we're doing, when we're doing it, and how we're doing it. You're not going to hear that now. But you can rest assured that our generals are very strategic. They're very ready. And we're going to lift up the Afghan forces. That's the goal. But we're also going to lean on the region. Pakistan can no longer be a safe haven for terrorism. India needs to step up and do their part. We're going to have our NATO allies very much involved in this, and we're going to push to win.
I want to move on because the president also talked last night about the need to heal our divisions at home. When you were governor of South Carolina after those horrific Charleston murders, you took on the white supremacists. You took down the Confederate flag, and you spoke out when the candidate Trump was very slow to disavow David Duke and the KKK. I want to show what you had to say then.
We saw and looked at true hate in the eyes last year in Charleston. I will not stop until we fight a man that chooses not to disavow the KKK. That is not a part of our party. That's not who we want as president. We will not allow that in our country.
Eventually, candidate Trump did disavow David Duke and the KKK. But what were you thinking last week when you saw the president blame both sides for the violence in Charlottesville, when you said that many very fine people were marching with the white supremacists?
Well, I picked up the phone and I had a private conversation with the president about Charlottesville, and it was taken very well. What I will tell you is there is no room for bigotry and hate in this country. I know the pain that hate can cause, and we have to isolate them the way they want to isolate others.
Did the president understand he made a mistake?
I think the president clarified so that no one can question that he's opposed to bigotry and hate in this country, and that when our soldiers go out and fight, they fight unified. We need to make sure that we're a country that's unified back home. Yet he still says that taking down Confederate statues is foolish. You took down the Confederate flag from the State House in Charleston. Well, you know, it was the state that decided, but what our focus was, the Confederate flag was a living, breathing thing. It was representative of the here and now, and there was no place for that, especially after we saw 9 people murdered with the killer raising up the Confederate flag. And so that's why we brought it down. When the issue of monuments came up in South Carolina at that same time, we knew that we couldn't take down every monument or change every street sign or change the name of every university, because there's history all throughout South Carolina. But instead, what we did is we worked with the mayor of Charleston to work on building an African memorial and an African museum, and that's what's happening right now. And so it's not just about what you take down, it's about what you proactively do to lift up your state and lift up your country. Ambassador Haley, thanks for your time this morning. Okay, thanks so much.
Also this morning, President Trump facing more fallout from his Charlottesville response. Our new ABC News Washington Post poll showing just 28% of Americans approve of how he handled Charlottesville, 56% disapprove. And last night, House Speaker Paul Ryan speaking about the president's response, saying he, quote, messed up. And in the wake of the Charlottesville events, the mayor of Phoenix has asked the president to postpone his campaign rally there tonight. However, the Trump campaign is moving forward, and our chief national correspondent Tom Yamas is there in Phoenix with all the latest on that. Good morning to you, Tom.
Amy, good morning. The mayor of Phoenix, a Democrat, has begged the president not to come here. He feels the timing is too close to Charlottesville, and there's a real fear that things could explode tonight. Here's why. President Trump is going to be speaking here at the convention center. This is where his supporters are going to be. You can see they're now building sort of a mini fortress around the convention center. Just a block away, tens of thousands of protesters. We're expecting pro-immigrant groups along with Antifa demonstrators. Of course, Antifa, the anti-fascists, they're not afraid to destroy property and or get into fights when they demonstrate. Now, the police will be fully staffed here, and the Arizona National Guard is also on standby. But the big question tonight, will President Trump pardon the sheriff here, the former sheriff, Joe Arpaio? The people who like Arpaio call him America's toughest sheriff, but the courts have ruled that he used racial profiling tactics, and he was convicted of contempt of court for not listening to a judge in one of those racial profiling cases. But he is one of the biggest supporters of President Trump. Arpaio tells ABC News he has not been in contact with the Trump campaign. He's not even coming here. But if the president chooses to pardon him, of course, he will definitely take that. Amy?
All eyes on Phoenix tonight. Tom, thank you so much.
It is going to be a tense night there. We're going to get the latest now on the investigation into the Trump campaign and Russia. A key figure behind the controversial dossier detailing unsubstantiated allegations about the Trump team's ties to Russia is set to speak with investigators on Capitol Hill today. And our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross, is here with the story. Good morning, Brian.
Well, good morning, George. Republicans in Congress today will step up efforts to find out who and what was behind that controversial so-called dossier that claimed so far without substantiation that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians to hack into Democratic Party computers and worse.
A key witness is due on Capitol Hill today. Glenn Simpson, a former journalist who specialized in money laundering and Russian organized crime, and then led the private investigation of Trump and Russia last year. This is how Simpson described what he does at a recent film festival.
I call it journalism forensics.
Simpson first began his efforts when Trump was running in the Republican primary. According to political operatives, Simpson was initially paid about $1 million by wealthy Republicans and then more later by Democrats who both wanted him to dig up dirt on Trump and plant negative news stories. The 35-page dossier on the so-called Russian connection to Trump, with some very salacious allegations, including unsubstantiated claims about Trump in a Moscow hotel room, was not completed until just before the election, and then provided to journalists, the Clinton campaign, and the FBI, all to the outrage of Donald Trump.
I saw the information. I read the information outside of that meeting. It's all fake news. It's phony stuff. It didn't happen.
Now, many Republicans in Congress are working to discredit the dossier and Simpson.
We will also pursue details about Mr. Simpson's role in this event and the creation and circulation of the dossier that started this whole controversy.
Congress also wants to talk with the former British spy who Simpson hired to investigate Trump's so-called Russian connection, Christopher Steele. But so far, he is refusing to talk. Steele has met with the FBI and provided agents with the names of his sources about the allegations in the dossier. Allegations the special counsel continues to investigate, George.
Yeah, there's a lot of fronts for that investigation right now. Brian Ross, thanks very much.